And before the video is over, I want you guys to comment down below your favorite bait to use in the winter, or if you even catch fish in the winter. Because I know when I first started, I swear I couldn't catch fish in the winter to save my life, and now look at me. I have my PB in the middle of December. What is going on, everybody? It's Austin from P&W Bassin here. Welcome back to another video. In this video, we are actually going to explain the best winter baits that you can use to catch bass in cold water. Now, I know this is probably one of the toughest times of years to actually get on those good fish. Even just finding the fish can be a challenge for some people. For some people, if you guys are on the right bodies of water, you can use these tactics and you can catch some of these nice fish. But if you guys are watching this and you live up north, most likely your water's going to be frozen and you won't be able to use these types of lures. So let's hit the intro and get started. Alright guys, welcome back. So the lures that I'm going to be telling you are not in any specific order on the best lures to use or the worst lures to use. And don't limit yourself to these lures. These are just some, that I have in my head, or the ones that I like to use. There are some that I don't have with me that I also use. But today we have about 7 different types of things that you can try out. And we're actually going to start off with the jig. As a lot of you know, the jig is by far my favorite lure to use. I just catch a lot of big fish on it. You can use it year round, and a lot of fish love to eat jigs. In the winter, one thing a lot of people like to do is actually use finesse jigs or a smaller type of jig. My go-to is going to be a football head jig right there, and you can see the head is kind of shaped like a football. That's why they call this a football jig. I like to use this because it's really meant for deeper water, kind of just dragging across the rocks or anything that's on the bottom. Just really slow. And that's one of the tips that you guys have to be aware of when fishing in the winter is slow down. Like, do not rush yourself at all. If you're casting out there, popping it back, you're doing it wrong. You might catch a few fish, but if you really want to dial down, catch some nice fish, you got to slow your retrieve down. So I'm going to cast this out, just drag it. I'm not going to be popping it really. I'm just going to be dragging it really slow and even giving it some pretty long pauses, because in the winter, that's when the fish really are going to attack your bait, is on those pauses. You don't have to use a football head jig if you're fishing wood. You can always use that structure jig right there. This is just a mop jig, PB&J color. And if you guys are also trying to match the hatch for like the crayfish that time of year, I know the crayfish aren't that active in the winter because it's so cold, but when the water turns colder, the crayfish are more of like a black and blue color. So if you have like a black and blue jig, that's going to be money for you guys. And actually last year in December, I caught my personal best bass. It was 7 pounds, 11 ounces, and it was on a black and blue jig with a Rage Craw as a trailer. And that's probably one of my favorite trailers as well to use. And I'm actually going to show you guys a picture of that bass right here. And that was just a blast catching that fish, and I'm so glad I could do it in December, because I think it's just pretty cool to say that I caught my personal best in the winter. So you can still catch those big fish in the winter. You just gotta, slow down like I was saying, and you'll get them. Another very popular bait in the winter is actually the drop shot. One thing that I suggest in the winter is sizing down your bait during the winter. So really, I have these 2 baits here. I have a Dream Shot and a DS Minnow by Fisher Brothers Baits. That is kind of a local company around the area, but these, just a small, really small presentation. A tip for the drop shot is to actually, in the winter, the fish like staying on the bottom. So since those fish are on the bottom, not really suspended as they might be like in other times of the year, you don't really have to have that drop shot from weight to your hook very long. I mean, you can have it 6 inches or less, and it might be dangling right in front of their face if their belly's on the bottom. And when you're working your drop shot, make sure you do not feel your weight when you are fishing. You want to really cast it out there, let it sit. You're going to twitch it, but you don't want to twitch it on a tight line. You want to bring your line up tight. You're going to drop your line down just a little bit, and you're going to work that slack. Because even if you don't feel anything, that worm is still going to be sitting there going like this, and then just drop it and it'll sink down to the bottom. Maybe bring it back up, drag it really slow, not too far, and just do the same thing. And hopefully you guys get a few bites on that. About last week, water temps probably low 50s, high 40s here where I fished, and I actually caught a 4-pounder on a drop shot, and that was awesome. That's in my last video if you guys want to check that out. Another finesse bait that you guys can use is a Ned rig. The Ned rig right here is kind of all bent up. It was actually in the plastic case for a while, so it's kind of melted and stuff, but this little rig right here, if you guys move this thing slow, you are definitely going to get bit. Like I was saying, it's just that small presentation that's going to get those fish to bite. And you're just going to want to maybe pop it once, pop it twice, and let it sit there on the bottom, because this thing is pretty much going to be sitting off the bottom just like that, shaking like that, and they're just not going to be able to resist. All right, guys, on to bait number 3. I guess it's not really a bait because there's not really one specific bait that I use in general for this, but it's just a football head. I mean, you got different sizes like that. This is probably close to a ½ an ounce. If you're fishing in deeper water, definitely go with this, but crap, where'd it go? There's a hook in my finger. All right, guys, so here it is again, and we got a really small one right there. That'd be for like a really shallow water, but I've caught a lot of fish in really deep water just using a football head. I've used single tail grubs like Gary Yamamoto single tail grubs. I've used swim baits, dual tail grubs like this, or even a rage craw works a lot. Maybe in the winter you don't want to use this as much because these things kick like crazy in the winter, and when the water is super cold, you don't really want a bait that is moving really erratic and all over the place. So maybe just go with a single tail grub. Those are the best. I just didn't have any with me. And maybe even a swim bait just like that. And you're just gonna be dragging it really slow on the bottom, and those fish will tear it up. Another bait that I actually absolutely love is a shaky head worm. I'm gonna get a little worm like that, maybe a really dark color if I'm fishing in muddy water, but that thing is gonna sit there on the bottom like this. And when this worm is connected to it, that tail is just going to be up here. And when you drag it, that tail is just going to be sticking up really slow on the bottom. Those fish are going to be following it. If they see it, it's not too big, and they're just going to slurp it up. And that should be a good bait for you guys. I've caught a lot of big fish on just this rig right here. If you guys use that rig, I'm sure you guys can catch some nice fish on it as well. Okay, here we go, guys. This is one of the only reaction type of baits that I have in my favorite winter baits to use, and that's a jerk bait. One thing you have to consider is I would say only use a suspending jerk bait. You don't really want one that's floating really fast, because a lot of the times when you're working that jerk bait, you really want it still, or maybe sinking really slow like this one just to get in some deeper water. But if you're using a floating jerk bait and you're working it through that area, those fish might be down there, but when they see it start floating up and going away from it, they might not want it. They don't want to move too much in the winter. They might only eat once a week, but if you find the right fish, and if this is sitting in front of their face, you jerk it and it's sitting right here, they might just not be able to resist this thing and hopefully munch it. So when you're fishing a jerk bait, like I said, you have to go really, really slow during the winter. It depends how finicky the fish are. I mean, if you're fishing and fishing is doing good for that day, or maybe it's just a normal winter day and you really need to slow things down. I mean, I've heard guys rip and wait 20 seconds. I've heard guys rip and wait 30 seconds. It just all depends on the fish. Keep trying different things, and I'm sure you guys will find some fish that will want to munch on that jerk bait of yours. All right, guys, so there's like 2 more baits that I don't have with me, but I'm actually going to tell you guys about, and you might want to try them out. I'm going to throw up a picture of one right here. This is actually a blade bait. The first time I used a blade bait was actually when I went down to Mississippi. I believe I was fishing like Pickwick Lake. We were using those, letting them sink to the bottom and then rip them up, and they would just flutter down. I think that day of fishing was really tough. We only caught like 2 bass, but we were catching crappie, bluegill. I caught this massive drum, and I'll show you guys that here as well. It was freaking awesome hooking that drum. I actually thought it was a really, really big bass, and if it was, that bass definitely would have been above 10 pounds. So definitely consider using that. I don't feel like the blade bait is actually really popular where I am, which is up in Washington State. I feel like that's really popular down south though, maybe on the East Coast. But I'm definitely gonna have to try using those blade baits in the next coming months when we're trying to catch those deep winter bass. All right, guys, I saved one of the best baits for last, and this is a bait that not many people know about at all. We actually use this in one of our lakes that we fish in like 50 to 60 feet of water, and we just slay the smallmouth. It's so fun doing that. I mean, it's really cold and pretty much all you're doing is sitting there, but when you hook those fish, it's just like a relief, because when you're fishing in that deep of water, when it's that cold, usually you're not used to catching those fish, but we managed to do it. Now, this is actually a technique that my buddy Madden taught me.
Howdy, Bill Dance here.
This is the only bait that I have with me that is like that, and it's on my keychain. So it's pretty much what you do is you Carolina rig crankbaits. I don't know if you guys have heard that before, but you take little Rapalas like this. I mean, you could take a different crankbait if you want, but this is what we've had a lot of luck with. Usually it has a bill on the end right there. Pretty much you rig up a normal Carolina rig, but instead of having like a soft plastic on the back or something where you're dragging on the bottom, you rig up one of those crankbaits. When you cast out, that crankbait's actually gonna rise up, but when you start dragging it, it's gonna come down and start wobbling like this. I'm telling you guys right now, that is so killer, and it's just awesome because you just feel those fish just attack that crankbait, and it's so fun. And I can't wait to get out there and start showing you guys those videos because it's been a while since I made one. So that is it for the lures that I have picked for this video. Now, like I said, don't let this video and the lures of my choice like stop you from trying different things, because you can definitely catch a lot of fish on a lot of different baits. These are just kind of the baits that I like to use, and I was thinking maybe you guys want to see the baits I use in the winter. A lot of the baits I use are going to be different just because of where I fish, the Northwest. It's a lot different than, like, say, down south. Definitely maybe look at some other videos on baits that people use down south. These are just kind of the stuff that I like to use. And you're probably thinking, why are you making this video? There's like hundreds and hundreds of best winter baits, top 5 winter baits, whatever. And I actually think I'm gonna start making more videos like this, and I just wanna get my opinion out to you guys on my channel. Maybe my channel will get somebody into fishing that hasn't actually been fishing before, so I just wanna give them all the information that I can. I'm not like a professional bass fisherman or anything, but I have been fishing for a few years now, and I'm starting to get the hang of it, I'd say. Maybe just a little bit, but I really hope this video helped you guys, and before the video is over, I want you guys to comment down below your favorite bait to use in the winter, or if you even catch fish in the winter. Because I know when I first started, I swear I couldn't catch fish in the winter to save my life, and now look at me. I have my PB in the middle of December. So it's pretty cool. You guys just gotta practice, get out there, start fishing. I know it's cold, but come on, you gotta fight through that cold weather, and I think you guys will be able to get on some bass. So let me know your favorite lure. And if you guys like this video and you are already not subscribed, go ahead, click this button right down here in the very far corner and you can subscribe, or this corner. I'm not really sure which one it is. One of these little corners is gonna have a P&W Bass on logo. Just click that and you guys can subscribe and watch all my future videos. This winter is gonna be filled with these types of videos where I'm sitting in my room, kind of just teaching you guys how to use a specific lure or technique or something like that, just so I can get as much content out to you guys as possible. I'd just like to say thank you guys so much for watching this video. Go check out my latest videos if you haven't seen those already, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.